Celtics Stuff Live.
Welcome to Celtics Stuff Live on CLNS Radio, the leading online provider of audio and video coverage for Boston sports. I'm Justin Poulin. With me is John Duke, and, well, the Celtics laid an egg last night against the Phoenix Suns, and it was funny because what a nice comeback and lots of young players getting minutes. I'm not sure Jordan Mickey did anything to secure his future with the Celtics with some extended time on the floor. Definitely looked horrendous offensively in the post. But we'll get into all of that. They let it slip away. They definitely should not have let it slip away once they took over. It hit some free throws. It's a win. I had the week wrong, John. I said they'd go 2-2, but I completely picked the opposite games. Not a win against Atlanta, a loss, which I think you predicted. Then we look at the Cleveland game, and I said, all right, the Celtics are going to lose that one, and fabulous game, entertaining, nice win. They closed the gap. They had an opportunity to close it even further with a win against Phoenix yesterday that they didn't get and should have. I also predicted a loss against the Lakers. I said first on the road. Look at what happened against Sacramento just a month or so ago on the last road trip, how it killed them. But they come out, and Jaylen Brown's probably finest performance in Celtics green, and they wind up knocking down the Lakers and your boy Brandon Ingram. I did see you on Twitter kind of defending Brandon a little bit when the Jaylen Brown versus Brandon Ingram battle came up. You had to know I had a little when I read that.
Well, I wasn't really saying that in comparison as much as, I think I was just trying to say, look, let's not give up on the guy yet. Come on, he's playing for a dumpster fire of a franchise. Oh, wasn't that great just to say that? That just felt really good. But they really are. The Lakers right now,
horrible, dude.
The owners are suing each other.
Defense.
The Bucks family hates each other.
Oh.
They brought in Matt. It's terrible. And then forget about what's on the court. And, poor Luke Walton is trying to figure it all out, but his team is trash, dude. And
do you think he regrets taking the head coaching position and leaving Golden State? I know he did an excellent job at the beginning of last season coaching in Steve Kerr's stead, but maybe he would actually prefer to be an assistant coach still.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but I think there's certainly he's rethinking the whole profession right now. That's probably what I'd say. It's terrible. I feel so bad for the guy. It's just, why do I want to do this? My guys aren't even, they're not competing.
Would you feel bad for him if he wasn't Bill Walton's son? Just that little thread of a Celtics connection after playing with the Lakers. Otherwise, I don't even think you'd even feel bad for him. You'd just
not at all.
No, you wouldn't.
I'd be glad.
It has everything to do with Bill Walton. I know it does.
No question about it. Everyone loves Bill Walton. If you don't love Bill Walton, you hate basketball and you hate life. So that's hyperbole. If you talk about Bill Walton, it's got to go right to hyperbole. So yeah, no, that's totally the way it is. I would be absolutely willing to just kind of, who cares, poor guy. But it's Bill Walton. You got to root for Bill. And if you read, there was a great article that Baxter Holmes wrote in ESPN about how Luke Walton grew up basically in Boston and in large part, and had a really formative year here when Bill was traded to the Celtics as part of that Cedric Maxwell deal. And it was really great just to see how he kind of get integrated, not only just with the team, but also particularly with Larry, and how Larry kind of took to the Walton boys and Luke in particular. So there's a little soft spot even for the Lakers head coach, but it is still the Lakers. And as I said, Ingram, I don't think his career is over because he hasn't had a great rookie year, but clearly, Jaylen Brown has leaped ahead of him and really just about anybody else in his rookie class in terms of their ability to compete. I don't.
That's what's so funny.
NBA level.
I don't mean to jump on you, but it was only a month ago that we were talking about Joel Embiid and a little bit of a fight with the Twitterverse I think John Corrales and I both agreeing that maybe somebody who's not truly first year out of college should be considered. And we already debated that. We won't rehash it. But the point is that I'm making is Embiid was a runaway favorite for Rookie of the Year. Now all of a sudden he goes down injured, and the conversation immediately shifts to whether or not Jaylen Brown could get the nod. And look at him in the starting role, and now here we see Avery Bradley out now with a hammy, not with the Achilles, and supposedly unrelated. And I'm sure it's unrelated to a point. You know, there's always the toll that the body takes from not having been conditioned and then coming back and trying to get into game shape or compensating for an injury. Who knows? They might be completely unrelated. At the end of the day, Avery Bradley's inability to stay healthy is giving Jaylen Brown an opportunity to play 25-plus minutes a night, and that might be good enough to get him into the Rookie of the Year conversation, especially if he has some big performances. I know he had a nice one against LeBron earlier in the year, and then he had this good game against the Lakers. He missed some free throws against Phoenix last night. That's certainly going to hurt his case to some degree, but it wasn't like Isaiah didn't miss free throws too. You know what's funny? I didn't know this, but I was on a plane, and I was able to get some pretty scratchy feed of the game in bits and pieces. But I will tell you, one of the things the Phoenix announcers said that I didn't realize, the Celtics lead the league in free throw percentage.
I did not know that. That's pretty remarkable.
It is when you consider. I think it's all Isaiah. And I know, again, he didn't have a great, he needed to hit a few last night, but at the same time, he's got to be the reason. He's the only one going to the line, and he does have ice usually.
Well, but, if you think about it, though, they really don't have a Drummond-type guy. They all can generally make, 65, 70. There isn't a guy, I think, probably below 65% on the team. They're all 70-plus, and I think those are the guys that kind of weigh it down a bit, too. So, I mean, they're all competitive at the charity stripe, that helps you get up there, I guess. But you're right. I mean, in terms of the volume and all that goes with that, Isaiah, I mean, Crowder's a good shooter. I mean, they've really got a really good, well-rounded cast of characters that can hit those free throws. And I hesitate to say that because free throws did play a part yesterday, and they have recently. So, but hey, we'll take it. Better to be ahead of the game than to be a team that's on the other end of that.
Oh yeah. Hey, real quick, follow Celtic Stuff Live on Twitter at CSL_tweet live. Follow me at CSL_Justin, and John is at CSL_Duke. Follow the entire CLNS Radio network at CLNS Radio, the Facebook page, facebook.com/CLNS fans. And don't forget to download our CLNS Radio app for iOS and Android. Just go to your marketplace, search CLNS Radio. It'll pull right up, download it. Lots of great shows. Actually, the Android app has been revamped a little bit. I love the new layout. CLNS Radio's YouTube channel with high-definition, full-length locker room interviews and the Garden Report with Jared Weiss can be found at youtube.com/CLNS Radio. This show is sponsored by Blue Apron and SeatGeek. We're going to get to that a little bit later, right around the midpoint of the show. But I will tell you, John, I'm really loving my Blue Apron meals. They showed up on Saturday. And my wife actually has the day off tomorrow, and not only am I going to get one Blue Apron meal, but I'm going to get two because she's cooking me lunch and dinner. So we're spoiling ourselves tomorrow.
Outrageous. That's awesome. I tell you, not only this Blue Apron is it a treat, it's fun. You kind of look forward to it because you never really know what's coming. And then you get it open and like, that seems interesting. I wonder how that's going to be good. And then this is my own personal experience. I'm always pleasantly surprised by how good it tastes. And I think it's because those ingredients are so fresh. And, that they're giving you good stuff. It's not like, we've all opened up the box and poured it into a pot and boiled it and ate it. It's like there's some real care and thought that goes into these meals. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I think for me, and we will talk about it more real quick at the mid break. But For me, it's the fact that we eat the same meals night in and
Yeah.
night out. We cook the same
Totally.
chicken the same way.
Yep.
We have sausage the same way. And the truth is we're just too busy with young kids, and I've been coaching my daughter's basketball team, and I travel nationally for work, and there's just not a point where I want to go, yeah, let's plan out some meals this week. Let's try something new. And the thing about Blue Apron is the groceries come. I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to look for it. So it just interjects a little bit of variety into our diet, which is nice.
Absolutely. And you're right. You don't have to plan for it. It's a surprise. It shows up at your door. And the fact is, there's a little bit of work, but the payoff is always there, and that's you never want to put a whole lot of time into something and not get a payoff. The payoff is going to be there when it comes to the Blue Apron meals.
All right. So speaking of payoff and putting time into something, the Celtics.
Yeah.
Dude, I just keep leaning more and more towards make the picks, but everything I read and everything I see, everybody else is going the other way. And I am all in on let's just re-sign when it's time. Obviously make a play for a max free agent this summer, but I want to make these picks now. I am so sold, and I'm also, I know we just talked about Brandon Ingram, and I brought up Jason Tatum last week, but I'm starting to think Jason Tatum, if we don't get one or two, I'd leap him ahead of Josh Jackson even, because he's a playmaker. And I also listened to Larry H. Russell's interview with Sam Vecini, and Sam now has a podcast on our network as well, so it's nice to have him with the family. But one of the things that Larry was talking to Sam about was, Lonzo Ball versus Markelle Fultz, who's going to be number one, that old. And, by the way, Sam's podcast is Game Theory. But one of the things Sam was saying that was sort of intriguing to me, and I've kind of thought Markelle Fultz 100%, but he's saying he thinks Lonzo Ball might even be a better fit because he's constantly directing the offense even without the ball in his hands, and it just keeps moving and moving and moving. And I almost think that's not a bad thing. The way that Brad Stevens wants to play versus getting another scorer, maybe they just, not that he can't slash and that he can't shoot the three ball, but he's a distributor, but he's not a distributor, and this was the point that Vecini made. He's not a distributor in the way that Rondo was, where he would pound the ball and wait for the offense in the half-court set to evolve. He's a distributor in the way that he gets the ball and then he kicks it back. He doesn't hang on to it for long periods of time. That kind of ball movement, when the Celtics offensively have been at the best, that's what it looks like.
Well, yeah, and either pick, you should never make with an idea of who you have on the team at the time, right? You should never sit back and say, well, who's going to fit best next to Isaiah? Who's going to be able to play off of Horford and Crowder? And, is one a better fit next to Marcus Smart? Like, you can't do that, because when you do that stuff,
you're giving me the best player available argument. That's
totally.
All. Yeah, I hear that.
But I don't think but you're not saying the contrary to that. I don't think Sam's saying that. I think, both of you are saying, look, take the best guy. But who is the best guy? And I think that that's the thing that's up for debate right now, because I look at, Markelle Fultz, I think since probably July, has been at the top of most draft boards. Most. But Danny doesn't think the way everybody else does either. He looks at the pit. And again, I believe he's more often right than not. He looks at who he thinks is the best fit, or who's the best pick, I should say. And he doesn't go by conventional wisdom. We know that. But I kind of took set up a little bit about Ball. In the last couple weeks, I'm starting to think, and I don't think it's because Fultz has been hurt, but I'm starting to think that the real NBA people are starting to watch Ball and say, he's got something. He's got that something. And I don't think they're saying Markelle Fultz isn't special, can't do the things that he can at the NBA level. But I think people look at Ball and they're taking a step up and saying, this guy could be something. And I think a guy like Paul Pierce said it on ESPN. I think that I'm not there yet on Ball, because I think that kind of ball movement works when you have talented players with you, and you plug Ball in here. There are talented players with him, but again, I have a hard time looking past a guy who can score and score everywhere on the floor, and move the ball, and has the size to defend. And I think there's some questions about Ball's dad and his involvement. There's questions.
Yeah, the Lakers thing is frustrating to hear, right?
Yeah.
And very similar to the Paul George comments. It's almost like they came out at the same time, and it just makes you grind your teeth and look at Luke Walton, and man, the kid's got hope, and we're feeling bad for him. But at the end of the day, I think one of the things about Ball that is intriguing the most to me is that, first off, he's 6'6". So here we are, we have a team, it's completely undersized in the backcourt, but you could literally draft Ball, and 3 or 4 years from now, you would have Ball and Smart and Brown at the 1, 2, 3, and you have guys that are willing to pass, who are unselfish, playmakers, but they're all, and their size is unique. Each of those three, the way that they, like, Ball is really big for a point guard. Maybe you shift him over to shooting guard, and Smart's, depends on how you want to do that defensively. But you got a lot of guys who are willing to move the ball with different traits and different assets. And again, if you're not going to move the pick, I don't know. And I'm with you on Fultz, but I was pretty much down on Ball, and I'm coming around. The other thing that Sam said on the Celtics Beat podcast was the fact that Ball has that killer instinct, that they're noticing that the media and the people that are around the team are just noticing that he's got that tenacity on defense and that drive and that will to succeed. And that's one of the things that drew me to Brown, even though he comes off as sort of intellectual and docile. When you see him on the court, the analysis was that he was aggressive to a fault. Well, that's what I like. Look at Marcus Smart. Look at Jaylen Brown. Aggressive to a fault, once you have some spacing in the NBA, is not a bad thing. So the thing about Ball is he's unselfish, but maybe he is aggressive to a fault on defense. That killer instinct, it can't be taught. It's 100% a factor in the NBA. It's a big factor. The desire, the drive, the self-motivation, the intrinsic ability to motivate, all of those things are really key when you're talking about players translating to the NBA game. And you look no further than Isaiah Thomas, and then even last night, Tyler Ulis, right? Undersized guys with the drive to win.
Well, and let's look at Danny Ainge's history, right? I mean, that's the type of guy he likes to take, maybe he has,
because that's who he
shortcomings
was
in other areas, but that's who he wants. He wants guys that want it more. And Brad Stevens, that's who he recruited. He wanted guys who are competitors first, players second. And I don't know enough of Lonzo Ball, personally, in and around the team, but Sam saying that and Paul Pierce saying that, I think you start to say, okay, maybe there is something more here than what we're seeing. And it's the ability of him to translate that at the pro level. Those guys understand it's not just what you see on the court. We see, as fans who watch college basketball or watch the tournament, at most you see 30 games a year, 35 games that these guys play. That's just a small piece, in one system playing against who knows who. It's those things where, guys like Paul Pierce or whoever who are looking from afar and saying, there's something here, or know guys within the program or know the LA scene enough to say, no, there's something more to this guy. And that's why I'm, like you're saying, I'm starting to kind of look around and say, there might be more to this here than we realize. And I would not be at all surprised to see Ball as the number one guy on more and more draft boards as we enter, getting closer and closer to June.
It's really too bad. So many of the top prospects, like Harry Giles is another one, in this draft wound up starting out with injuries, Tatum being another one.
Yep.
And I think that if you pick top 5 in this draft, you're in pretty good shape. I'm not sure that there's really, I understand that people are looking at Fultz and Ball as a clear 1-2 punch, but wasn't that the deal last year? And now all of a sudden we're talking about Jaylen Brown as a potential future All-Star and Rookie of the Year candidate. I think you're pretty safe in this draft because of the depth, picking pretty much anywhere you're going to get a solid player. And knowing that, I just wish that maybe the competition for the top 1, 2, and 3 spots was a little bit stronger in the college game, because I think maybe that would have given the pick enough oomph for them to potentially deal it at the trade deadline. Not that I'm sour about that. I just told you I would prefer to rebuild anyway. I'd prefer to make the picks. But my point being that it didn't really seem like the options were there, because people are still, even though we know this is a deep draft, even though we know the players are awesome, the fact that not knowing where the Celtics pick will be is what really prevented deals from happening. People would rather deal with a known commodity. And I think if there had been a little bit more competition for those top 4 or 5 slots, who's number 1, then it would be a little bit more attractive earlier. Keep that in mind, though. Here we go. This is my thing about Fultz. I mean, he's not even going to be in the NCAA tournament, right? They've pretty much fallen out of that possibility. Is that correct?
Unless they win the Pac-12, which that would be a complete Cinderella situation there. But
so here we are, just like last year. Some of the top picks aren't even going to be in the tournament. This is frustrating, because that whole one and done thing was supposed to bring players back into the tournament, and that's when I mean, we are going to see some. Obviously, Tatum's going to play. Obviously, Ball's going to play. Giles, as long as he's healthy, still at that point will play. But I think we're going to miss. I mean, we're missing the consensus number 1 overall pick in the tournament. That's rough. I think that as good as he is, that still does present some unknowns. Just the level of talent that he's playing throughout the year, that has to make it difficult to make an assessment.
I think so. But we always say that, and then Jaylen Brown is a good example of that. Like, we got a whole season's worth of him, and he only got out in the first round, and we figured it out pretty quickly that, that there was something there.
But he went to Cal, like, keep in mind, he went to Cal because he was kind of, following his intellectual, that he wanted to go to a good school. And so I'm not sure why Fultz chose UW. Have you read anything?
Well, no, I mean, he was highly recruited out of DeMatha. I mean, he was.
Oh, that's right. They knew him early in the process. I did read that article. That's right. I mean, he was loyal, so that's good.
But I don't think that's. I don't think that was a deter. I mean, I don't think that has much to do with where he is now, as much as to say that Fultz. I think that Fultz has he put himself in a situation where I think they also thought Marquise Chris wasn't going to be leaving. And so, because remember, these guys are making a decision not at this point a year ago. They're making a decision sometimes months before that. And Chris, if he and Chris were there right now, that would be a hell of a team. Unfortunately, there's just not a lot there, in Washington, and Romar hasn't really gotten a lot more out of him. So it's a lot more. Well, I want to say it's like the Ben Simmons situation, but there are certainly some parallels there that you can draw.
Speaking of Chris, he looked pretty good last night.
He did. He did. And I think there's a lot of people, as he kind of came into the league, people are like, whoa, okay, this guy's got something. And that's why you don't draw conclusions about a draft, 75% through a season. You do it, years into it, right? And so, right now, Jaylen's ahead. 2014 draft, everyone was saying, there's nobody good out of it. Embiid has played 25 good games now. That's all he's played, but he's played 25 good games. Kudos to him. You know who leads the 2014 draft class in win shares? Marcus Smart.
Yeah, I knew where that was. I knew where you're going with that.
You know what I mean? Like the 6th pick, and Keith Smith did a 3-part series for Celtics blog this week. Some of you probably read, and I think it was part 2 where he talks about the impact of the number 1 pick and what is the value of having the number 1 pick or a top 3 pick. And it was like all but a handful of years, only one, maybe two, only one, I think, of the top 3 picks actually ended up making an all-star team. So that's why it's really about good drafting as much as anything else. It's not about, do you get the top pick? Do you get the one player who can play? It's, can you scout? Can you find, if it's not the number 1 player, can you find your guy? And there's opportunities there to find your guy. Tatum, could be the best player in this draft. There's Dennis Smith could be the best player in this draft. Who would have thought, Russell Westbrook would have been the best player in his draft? But there he goes, Kevin Love. There's a lot of players who end up in that 4 or 5 range that, they don't have this, they don't have that. But you know what? They maximize everything else they do have, and they add ways through their first few years to mitigate that. Jaylen Brown is a perfect example of that for all of us who are Celtics fans, to say he can't shoot. He had a clutch 3 here last night against Phoenix that kind of helped to get them back or keep them in it. There is no more cringing when he starts to pull up from behind the arc. None. I don't have any hesitation about it at all.
And his ability to finish is improving too. And
it is. You know what? Don't drive into the lane with 5 people around you and without a plan. That's my only beef with Jaylen right now.
Well, that's a good beef, and it's to be expected. That's the aggressive to a fault aspect of things. The problem, the good thing is not the problem, but the problem with college and the good thing for Jaylen is that a lot of times he finds space that he wouldn't have before anytime he attacked the basket in college because it's so collapsed in on the paint. He was going to be driving in without a plan numerous times. Now with the spacing, he can, catch some people a little bit backdoor, baseline drive. He's finding opportunities. But he has to know what he wants to do with it. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Blue Apron. Blue Apron's mission to make incredible home cooking accessible to everyone. And they know that when you cook with incredible ingredients, you make incredible meals. So they set the highest quality standards for their community of artisanal suppliers, family-run farms, fisheries, and ranchers. And it's kind of like John and I were talking about before, is what I love about Blue Apron is it just mixes it up a little bit. Instead of cooking the same thing every night, we get different meals, and the great thing is the meals do change. They don't use the same meal once in the same 12-month period, and even if they do bring back something similar, there's always a new twist. And so for me and my family, it's just nice because we cook the same chicken, we cook the same sausage, the same burgers, the same spices on everything, but I don't have to plan for it. I don't have to do the grocery shopping. It shows up. It comes packaged perfectly. Everything is fresh. The food looks the same after you cook it as it does in the recipe card, which is fantastic. And there's no weekly commitment, and you can change your recipes based on your preferences. So there's a lot of control. Even though you're getting something different every single week, you can kind of look at what your options are. Upcoming meals: cashew chicken stir fry with tango mandarins and jasmine rice, roasted pork with apple, walnut, and farro salad, and crispy barramundi with quinoa and roasted carrot salad, udon noodle soup with miso, and soft-boiled eggs. But here's the great thing with Celtics Stuff Live. You can check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals for free. That's right, 3 free meals and free shipping. All you have to do is go to blueapron.com/Celtics. You're going to love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so don't wait. That's blueapron.com/Celtics. Blue Apron, a better way to cook. And our newest sponsor, SeatGeek. As the Celtics playoff push heats up, SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to every game. And with SeatGeek's seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. There's nothing like being in the stadium for the biggest plays of the year, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for great value. You know, March Madness is coming right up, and that's why we've been talking a lot of draft talk on this show. John, you and I obviously basically spent the whole first half of the show talking about potential prospects and a potential rebuild, but with March Madness coming up, SeatGeek may be a great opportunity for you to see many of these players in action. And John, I think you said you already referred somebody, a friend to SeatGeek.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, I mean, it's that time of year. Look, and I hate to say it, but there's fewer games left on the schedule than we've already had. So if you want to get down to Boston and see a game, you better go. You got to get going now, man. And you know, there's some.
In the words of Casey Affleck, now's the time, bud. Now's the time,
bud. That's right. Yeah, I'm gonna have my Dunkin' and throw it on your front windshield, dude. If you don't get it right, right guy. Anyway,
SeatGeek saves you time and money by searching multiple ticket sites. They compare prices, find amazing deals, and they're going to get you the most bang for your buck. SeatGeek grades every ticket based on value to help you immediately identify the best seats that fit your budget. Plus, every purchase, as I said before, is fully guaranteed. So you can shop for tickets on SeatGeek with confidence, and it doesn't end with sports. SeatGeek also has plenty of concert, comedy, and theater tickets available too. One of my favorites, Jim Gaffigan, making the rounds right now. So yeah, that would be somebody to go see with the SeatGeek app. I think he's actually going to be in Boston coming right up and then floating down here where I live in Pennsylvania. So best of all, our listeners get a $20 rebate off their first SeatGeek purchase. And to get your $20 rebate on tickets, download the SeatGeek app, go to the settings tab, click add a promo code, and here it is, enter promo code CSL 2017, and SeatGeek will send you $20 after you made your first purchase for a ticket. So download the SeatGeek app and enter promo code CSL 2017 today. Okay, John, so this week, Ryan Bernardoni teased us. I think it was on Monday on Twitter about some analysis, and then you go and read his article, and if you really break it all down, it looks like he's telling us that the team has to trade Avery Bradley if they keep the pick. And then, after the loss against Phoenix, Kevin O'Connor, formerly Celtics blog, now The Ringer, tweets out that Jaylen Brown is so close to Jay Crowder, he'll probably be better than him in the next 12 months, which even for a huge fan of Jaylen Brown like myself, that's even a stretch, right? But here we are, not even a year removed from the Boo Birds on the selection. I think that's how I tweeted it out. And all of a sudden we have Jay Crowder's replacement. Both players on cap-friendly contracts, definitely something that we've talked about all season long, that on some level Bradley and Crowder were the most tradable because they do have those nice cap-friendly deals. And at the same time, they're both young and they're solid defenders. You've got the 3-and-D player in Jay Crowder, which I think any team would want. And you also have Avery Bradley, who on the ball is the best defender in the entire NBA. He's slowed down Steph Curry, and then you go look at somebody like Jay Crowder, and just the other night basically puts the clamps down on LeBron. And those are two featured players with the top two teams that were predominantly figured to go and face each other in a rematch again for the finals this year. Now, Kevin Durant obviously gets injured, and we're not totally sure he'll be back for the playoffs, and even if he is, will he be 100%? He'll definitely be rusty whenever he comes back. Didn't seem to hurt Golden State last year. They fought through the postseason with injuries to Steph Curry. Certainly they didn't take home the prize, but by that time I don't think injury had anything to do with it. I think LeBron had everything to do it with transcendent, otherworldly performance after, falling behind 0-3 in the finals. But we've been there, we've done that, we've talked about it. At the end of the day, these two players, are they truly expendable? If we're talking about possibly making a deal for somebody like Jimmy Butler on draft night. It's been Garpax rumored that they want players who can play now. Hey, two studs at the 2 and the 3, a guard and a wing, who under the age of 26 on cap-friendly deals, toss in a Brooklyn pick. Maybe not this year's if they've held out this long, but maybe yes. And you go get Jimmy Butler. We've always said they seem like the most tradable, and it also decreases the amount of salary problems that the Celtics will have down the line in terms of re-signing players, because those guys are not coming back at the bargain they're on right now.
No. Back up the Brinks truck, right? That's Isaiah's term, is back up the Brinks truck. I think that's why you got to look at it. It's not because they're bad players or they're not valuable or any of those things, but Bill Belichick's made a career out of getting rid of the guy a year too soon, and it's not a situation of perhaps that they're losing their ability or they're not worth the money they're going to be paid, but you also have to look at where you are as your franchise, and can your cap sustain this? And why wouldn't you make a deal too soon and not go to free agency with a chance of losing Bradley for nothing? I don't think that Danny Ainge wants to lose him for nothing, but I think he wants to get something for him. I don't know that the idea of future picks are really the answer, but perhaps if you're able to get a trade exception and future picks, then you can add a player with those picks later on in the year when you don't have to worry about matching salaries and things don't get kind of weird with trying to fit a max player under the cap. I think the deals, or I should say the write-ups that Ryan's done and Keith put some of the same thoughts and effort into it for Celtics blog too. The one thing that they're doing is that they're really saying, look, you got to look at the money, and $300,000 is basically where, through some easy moves, what is short from a max salary for Gordon Hayward. Now, will he say, I don't need that extra $300,000 because that allows us to keep a key piece? Possibly. But, these guys, if Gordon Hayward's going to leave a place where I think they're going to be willing to pay him handsomely, maybe not the full amount he thinks he's worth, I think, we're going to see another similar situation now, Horford, which is beloved in where he is, but perhaps they're not sure he's worth the money that Hayward's going to want. That's the only way you're going to get him. I think that the Celtics have more flexibility to make a deal done. I think we've seen every year the team that signs the biggest free agent is able somehow, some way, to move pieces around the chessboard to get the room they need. And I have no doubt that the Celtics can do the same thing. Just as, San Antonio Spurs 2 years ago did for Aldridge, and just as last year when Durant decided he was going to go to Golden State, they made some decisions after that to clear that space. I have no doubt the Celtics are in the very same boat.
Well, it's one of those things where players aren't expendable today unless you need to clear the cap space. It's pretty simple. If you got a commitment from a player at that point, there are guys that can go and the fan base isn't going to be upset and the team is going to be better for it. And so those decisions get made. And here's another thing. How different do you think this team is going to look next year? Because there's all kinds of rumors out there that this offseason really is going to be the one when Wick's fireworks comment really comes to play. Because if they don't get a max free agent, sure, they can re-sign a lot of these players. And they just continue to go the youth movement, which we spent the whole first half of the show on. But let's say they do go all in. Let's say they ante up and they start to make deals and they start to make moves. I think this team is going to look drastically different, and that's kind of Ryan Bernardone's point. It says, right, I'm just going to quote him from the Celtics Hub article, but he says if they do sign a max salary free agent, they will have to make choices defined by their draft pick. If the pick is 1 or 2, they cannot keep both Avery Bradley and Terry Rozier with the cap as it stands today. I'm paraphrasing. So at that point, the best action is keep Rozier and trade Bradley for future picks. See, that's bizarre, right? Because now we're not even talking about really getting a whole lot in return. I'm imagining there's some sort of expiring contract and then a bunch of picks. And imagine Danny trading players and then just continuing to add to his cache of picks. That's almost kind of unheard of in some ways. But the other thing that was on Larry H. Russell's interview with Sam Vecenie was, what's the value of these first round picks? Because if you are going to add max free agents, you need to surround them with inexpensive talent. And there's no better way to do that than by making first round selections, to get good talent in the lottery, somewhere in the lottery. Typically you'd prefer to be, top 5 or 6 anyway, worst case scenario. But you can grab players like Marcus Smart, et cetera, on good deals. There is no cheaper deal than the rookie contract. It doesn't get better than that. So I kind of like what Ryan is alluding to, and I'm gonna tie it into Sam Vecenie's comments on Celtics Beat, just because one of the things they were talking about was, how do you place a win share value? And I'm not sure they use the term win share, but that's what Sam was getting at. What is the win share value of a first round pick or the number 1 overall pick and the second round pick? Because of the fact that they're on a cap friendly deal. Think about how much talent you can stockpile around a couple of high lottery sections. Around a couple of all-star players with lottery selections. You just don't see it very often, right? It doesn't happen because if you're a top team, you don't make those picks. But if the Celtics spin off a guy like Bradley, and they've already done it in the way that they dealt with Brooklyn and blew up the KG Paul era, and I don't even call it the Ray era anymore, because, in some ways it was KG Paul, Rondo, and Bradley, right? But anyway, that's Ray's fault. He gets what he gets. At the end of the day, they might actually be able to float in 2 worlds, and I'm not sure it is such a all-in or total rebuild, because they could do something very Belichickian, where they decide which all-stars they want to surround these draft picks, or which all-stars they're going to go with, and then they let the draft picks round out the roster cost effectively. That could be some pretty sustained dominance, and really almost dynasty level. It would be very Auerbachian of them to pull that off, and it could happen just on principle. I just think this little nugget at the end of Ryan's article really points to it. What if you do spin Bradley off for a couple, maybe it wouldn't be multiple future picks unless you're talking about dealing with a fairly decent team, but what if they spun him off to, like a Phoenix, and got some first round picks you probably only get 1 first round pick, but what if they keep adding to that cash? It really would be something, because it would almost be like a cornucopia of draft picks.
Cornucopia of draft picks?
I think 10 years ago,
wow,
cornucopia was in, but nobody even knows what that is anymore.
It's a melange of draft picks, a veritable table setting on your Thanksgiving meal of sports. Anyway,
it's the stuffing. If you're going to go to it's the stuffing. It's really what makes the turkey.
You're right. I think that the idea of living in 2 worlds is fine, but there are 2 bills coming due. So punting on Bradley is totally acceptable to me. I think you can, for roster balance reasons, I think there's any number of reasons why you can look at him and I say this not even 7 days separated from when he totally locked down Kyrie Irving, the guy with the best dribble in the league, locked him down to a degree that was just amazing to watch. You can appreciate that and yet say, that's great, but we can't get a rebound and we need to augment our roster, add draft picks. There's just value there that fits better for where this team is. I think you can look and say willing to do that, but you still have to pay Isaiah. So even if you're living in 2 worlds, you have to make sure if you do that you sign Isaiah to such a contract that he is tradable. That's the thing, is you have to be willing to sign guys to these big deals, like Isaiah, like the all stars, as you said, that you're going to surround with these kids. You have to be able to say, okay, I'm signing Horford for $113 million. I need to be able to make that a contract that's tradable within a reasonable period of time. Just because who knows what happens with those kids? Do they break out? Do they need to move one of them? So move one of the all-stars so that they can truly shine. There's just it's kind of a brave new world of roster construction. It's really nothing like we've seen anywhere else.
So
like
I'm gonna bring in a buzzword on this.
Ooh,
which is one of my favorites. No, cornucopia is just a word. But
it's not just a word.
This is the new high upside.
Is not just a word.
It's not.
That's big time stuff. But anyway,
when we combine cornucopia with what I think is the new high upside, positionally flexible cornucopia. See, right, it's just so inappropriate, this positionally flex. But I think it guides the Celtics' decision making. Yeah. I think they greatly value players who have positional flexibility. Yeah. See, I can't even say it with a straight face. But you've heard that a lot, right? This is the new thing. Yeah. We need players that can play multiple positions. They can switch. I mean, that's really what it's all about, is on defense, the switches don't kill you, and the mismatches don't present themselves. You're minimizing that. And I think that's Brad's game. And so here's what I would say. If you look at the roster as constructed today, and we divide it into two lists, who is positionally flexible and who is not. And I think we can go to the draft, and it's kind of what I was getting at with Lonzo Ball. I think Fultz is still flexible. He can work on and off the ball. But somebody like Ball, you could see him defending a three, a wing. You can see him defending three positions. And he's a passer and a scorer. He's a slasher. I'm not sure he can necessarily score at all three levels, but he can definitely score at two. And he's a very unselfish distributor, and he can be a cog in the offense. It doesn't have to be a focal point. I think on offense, being somebody who's unselfish, who can move the ball and make the right play intellectually, having somebody who can attack the basket like Jaylen Brown and Isaiah Thomas is important. There's all these little pieces, but being flexible and being able to play multiple positions, I think, guides this team's decision making, which is one of the reasons why Crowder's so valuable to them. But Crowder really can't get down into the guard. He can't guard ones and twos. He's not able to do the guards, but he can do wings and he can do bigs. That 3-4 spot. But Jaylen Brown is extremely flexible in terms of the positions that he plays. He's already played the 2, 3, and the 4. Marcus Smart plays the 1, 2, and the 3, and has been known to get rebounds over gigantic 4s and 5s like Porzingis, occasionally. So you don't get killed in the switch. Somebody like Avery Bradley, pretty much locked into the 2. And so when we have this conversation about how tradable he is, despite the fact that the performance we saw against KYRIE Irving was amazing, I think that's where it all lies. I think that's what makes him available, because they cannot move him around out on the court. He's pretty much locked into the 2.
That's a great point. That's a really good point, because that is true. That lack of positional flexibility does hurt him. You can't play the 1. Can't put him next to, let's say, you do sign Gordon Hayward. You can't put him next to Gordon Hayward. You can't put him next to, and basically being the lead ball handler. It's not his role. So you are limited there. And Fultz has a wingspan of almost 6'10", despite being 6'4", 6'5". Ball has a wingspan of 6'7", and being 6'4", 6'5". So both guys can not only guard 1s, 2s, maybe some 3s eventually, particularly Fultz with his wingspan. That's quite impressive. But you're right, that's positional flexibility. That's why you do look at Bradley. But
what about Tatum? Do you see him as as only a 3-4? Do you think you can slot him in a small ball lineup at the 5? I mean, you're a Duke fan. You should know better than me.
4, maybe. Not 5. No. I mean, he's 6'8", 6'7", 6'8". He's got a wingspan of 6'11", and standing reach almost 9 feet. I mean, he's big, but he's not. He's not. He's big in terms of he's long, I should say. He plays long.
He's a little more Marquise Chris-like, except without quite that level of athleticism.
Yeah, no, I would say he's more. I was kind of the comparisons I've been working off of with him are, and it's, as a Celtics fan, it's weird to say, but Paul Pierce is one, Caron Butler's another. These kind of Bonzi Wells. I mean, a big 3 who can maybe play a bit of bully ball, who can create his own shot, get his own. He's starting to kind of branch out his shot, add some. That's kind of his downside, is that he really hasn't added the 3-point shot to a great degree, but he's shooting better and better. He's at 35% from college 3 right now, which is okay, but it's got to be a lot better. And if you can do what Jaylen Brown's doing, and you can shoot 35% from NBA 3 as a rookie, you got something there. He's a compliment to Jaylen, I think. Jaylen is going to be the up and down, the more defensive-minded player. Tatum isn't there defensively, but offensively, he knows he's got all the moves. He's got the footwork down. I think that's where he's at. He's not your big guy, though. He's not going to be, your small ball 5. That's not going to be, Jason Tatum's game.
So who do you think in the draft is the most flexible positionally? No, forget it. We just did that. Let's talk about the roster. Who is on the brink of destruction on the Celtics roster other than Avery Bradley? Are there other players?
Of destruction.
Or I don't know. The brink. Instead of the Brinks truck. Who is on the brink? Right.
We're gonna line them up.
Right. Some of these guys are waiting for the Brinks truck, and the others are on the brink. And who's on the brink for the Celtics because they really don't move around? I mean, I think first off, Amir Johnson. I mean, he's not going to be back next year. You can pretty much count him out unless they whiff entirely, and then again they'll bring him back on a 1-year deal.
I think, but that's the hard piece of this, is that at some point you have to have the guy who does the rebounding, the block shots, and gets under the basket. And you've already decided to give Al Horford $25 million a year, or $27 million a year. So at some point you need that guy next to him who's bigger than him, right? Whether it's starting the game, whether it's in certain lineups, you need to have that guy. And I don't know.
So if they whiff, do they go after Bogut then? Do you think they did lay down that foundation?
Well, you know what I think that they're going to do is I think they're going to, and you tweeted this out earlier in the week, but the comment that Mike Gorman said on with us back in December before trade talks at Tarp, I think JaMychal Green is a perfect 4 here. I think he is a guy. Guess
what else he is? Tell me.
What?
Say it with me. He's flexible.
Positionally. He is.
I mean, that was one of the comments, and that's what I noticed. It was becoming this strong buzzword because that was my response to that tweet was Mike Gorman said this when he was on our show months and months ago around the holidays. But the other thing I didn't say that really stuck out to me, and I can't remember what I retweeted, but it was that he was flexible in terms of his ability to play multiple positions. And I thought, yep, there it is. At the very least, he could be a Crowder replacement, right? If they do, and I get he's a little bit different. He's a little more leaning towards the 4 and 5 instead of the 3 and 4. But that's actually exactly what this team needs. And he might be able to throw the body up on LeBron. Maybe not exactly the same way as Crowder, but even Jaylen has been able to play LeBron adequately, not like Crowder, but adequately. So, maybe they use a little bit of a scheme between the two, but if they do make a move with like a Bradley and a Crowder, JaMychal Green may balance the roster, so to speak.
That's exactly my thought, is that's your balancing move, I suppose, is to try to get him. And, whether you sign him as a restricted free agent, do the old offer sheet thing, the Grizzlies are they've given a lot of money out. Zebo's coming off the books this year, so they are getting some relief, but, they've committed a lot of money to Gasol. They've committed a lot of money to Mike Conley this past year. Are they going to want, I would want to keep JaMychal Green if I'm a Grizzly, but, you don't want to pay tax to do so on a team that's probably on its way down, not on its way up. That's my sense, the Grizzlies at least. It's a tough call, and I think it's a tough call for the Jazz too. The toughest call is probably by, the Clippers, but if I'm, looking back at the Celtics roster, I mean, you're right. Positional flexibility is absolutely key. And the number of guys who are on the list of, I would say the least positionally flexible guy is Isaiah Thomas also.
Yeah, it's so going to go there. Yep.
I mean, where else can you play him besides the one? And yes, you can play him off the ball, but who's he going to defend? And I don't want to make this
Couldn't
about
even defend
Isaiah,
Tyler Ulis yesterday.
But yeah, and when you look at matchups with Washington, where do you hide Isaiah? When you look up with matchups with, let's say, Toronto, you going to put him on Lowry? Hell no. You're going to put him on DeRozan? Hopefully not. Norm Powell, I guess on DeMar Carroll if they put DeMar in, but that's the concern, right? Is that you got to get more offense than he gives up on D. It's not from lack of effort, but
the problem is that nobody else can score in crunch time. He's so handcuffed, this team, literally to the Brinks truck. Like, unless they find somebody else who can provide that scoring, it doesn't matter how many players can play multiple positions. It's not going to solve their problem when the game is on the line. Sure, there was a gaffe in last night's game where Jake, and I don't know that Isaiah was as good of a teammate about this as Jay was, because Jake sort of took it all on, but I think Isaiah was just as much of a part of them boneheading that final 4 seconds. But at the end of the day, they don't have anybody else to score. And finding somebody with that killer instinct is not easy.
And I think that's why you look at Markelle Fultz. To go back to the first thing we were talking about is that
I see. You think that makes Isaiah expendable at the end of his contract, which may not be a bad idea because he'll be approaching 30 at that point. So how many years? Yeah. I mean, if he's a 2-time All-Star at that point, led the Celtics from, the brinks of destruction.
Oh.
There you go. See how I did that? But he let him out of brinks of despair or whatever. I don't know. But he's going to get paid. And he's going to get a 6-year deal. And do you really want Isaiah Thomas at 34, 35, and 36 on this roster making max money for all the heat that's been placed on Al Horford and his contract? I mean, at least he's a big man, right? A big man who can shoot. But Isaiah, he's going to be struggling those final 3 years of that deal. And maybe I have the age off a little bit, and maybe it's 33, 34, 35, but a 6-year deal, it does not favor the Celtics, and not at max money.
So, yeah, I mean, he's 27 now. He'll be 28 at the end of this contract. They could do the extension, and that probably makes the most sense, is to extend him and get him more money now. And, that's a 3-year extension, which will put him,
at like 31, turning into 32, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
I think that's a money move for both team and player.
But to give him 5 years right now is not a good choice. But so let's say you take Fultz or Ball and you put him next to Isaiah, and by the time their rookie deal is up, then you can pay them. You can pay those guys. And the beautiful part of that is that, you're going to get way more value out of those players than what they're more than likely than what they're going to be paid. So you're really not paying Isaiah and Markelle Fultz or Alonzo Ball $31 million, and two, you're getting $35 million for two guys. And by year 2, year 3, that's probably a good deal.
Yep.
Just one way of looking at it. I don't know, but
the extension makes the most sense. That's the way they got to go. Otherwise, I think they separate ways.
Well, I'm not yet where you are in terms of willing to kind of look on the younger side. I mean, I do think that there's a chance that they can get the players they need to compete now. Let
me say, barring a deal or, big, huge splash. Like, let's say they get Blake Griffin and Blake stays healthy. That's a whole different conversation. Right? Obviously. I'm not sure that it's a different conversation with Hayward though, because Hayward's, I think you're still teetering. And I love Hayward and I want him to come, and I think he fits the schema of this team very well, but I think you're still teetering a little bit if you're getting Gordon as your max free agent. I think you can still do a little more of that leaning towards the youth movement.
But a lot, I would also say though, is that I don't think it's one move. I think it's a series of moves, and it's not just, okay, well, you get the max free agent and then you get a center. No, I think you get the max free agent and then you still have all the tools you need without giving up, your draft pick.
I see where you're going. You're saying Thomas, Butler, Hayward, Horford, and X.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's completely feasible. And when you do that, let's look at the ages of those guys. Aside from Horford, they're all significantly on the right side of 30. This is not, I think part of it is for Celtics fans, we loved the KG Paul Pierce era, but it was gone way too fast, and none of the guys we traded.
That's why I lean rebuild. You just nailed it.
No, I know, but that's my point though, is that when we got those guys, they were 31, 32, not 26, 27, 28. And that makes a big difference. I mean, yes, KG is an all-time great, but that's not, we're talking about a very different, to get them several years on this side of 30, they still have chances to get better as players. It's not over for those guys. And so I think, like, if you can get, guys like Blake Griffin and Gordon Hayward and Butler and George, I mean, those are guys who not only are good, but have a chance to get better still.
God, I would just love to beat Kevin Durant in the finals. That would just make my day. It would make my day. And
well, if you beat Durant in the finals, he may join you this summer, so who knows?
Well, I'm not thinking it's going to happen this year, but I got you. I think Durant is going to be in Golden State for a good long time because guess what? Those players are all on the right side of 32. Could be nice as Cleveland fades out. The Boston Golden State rivalry could fade in, which would be listen. Everybody wants an East-Wester like that, right? It's not quite L.A., but it's close enough. And with the way that the Durant thing went down, there's plenty of fuel on that fire. Not quite the same as if Oklahoma City and Golden State were going at it, but there's enough fuel. And listen, pretty much everybody hates Boston, and Boston hates you too. So that's kind of the way the fan bases go at this point, at least. And it's us against the world type of deal. So there'll always be a rivalry at some point. And I think that would be exciting. Listen, we got to wrap the show, but let's just lay out, because we are going to see Golden State this week as well as the Clippers tonight, and then they wrap up the road trip against the Nuggets on Friday. We will have our show after the Celtics get a chance to come home. They've got an ABC afternoon game against the 500 Bulls right now, or coming up. They're 500, and
Payback.
That's coming up in just under a week. Yeah, payback is due. So what do you think happens? This is a tough, especially the next two games on the road. You kind of want to anticipate a rebound on the second, after a loss to Phoenix, but it's the second night of a back-to-back against a Clippers team that just got, robbed. They were in rough shape when they came to Boston, and the fan base was nuts. You got to think they got revenge on their mind. And then obviously the Golden State matchup. Without Durant, I think they have a shot against Golden State, but I gotta think they go 0-2, and then they take one against the Nuggets and Bulls. I'm going 2-2 again this week. 2 losses followed by 2 wins.
Well, so I was 2-2, and I was 3-1, and were it not for Tyler Ulyss's prayer of a shot, I'd be very happy right now. Although I didn't think they were gonna, I had the wrong game, they'd lose. So, I'm looking at where we are, where the schedule is this week, because I'm trying to see, are there schedule wins here that the Celtics can pull out? They've got time in between all of the games they have. It's not like,
except for tonight's. Except for tonight's. That's the brutal one.
Right.
Yep.
But it's a short trip all the way over to, from Phoenix to LA. That's like going New York to Boston. It's not a big deal.
And they've already acclimated to West Coast time, so I'll give you that.
Exactly. Yep.
Although Jay King has not acclimated to West Coast time.
Well, when you got that man bun, the brony tail as he calls it, that doesn't help. The Clippers been off since Saturday. They've had 2 days off. I think they lose to the Clippers. I think that they beat the Bulls on Sunday, even though it's the first game after a long road trip. I think they beat the Nuggets, sitting down. I think they beat the Warriors.
There it is. It's doable, though, with Durant out. It's definitely doable, and Draymond Green can't shut his pie hole.
Well, and I'd also add that the Warriors have been on I'm hoping the Celtics can break the string of just what the basically break the string of what has been done to them before, and that's that they're going to face what I'm hoping they're going to break on Sunday, because they're going to face a team in Golden State that's, as I said, they've been away, they've been on the West Coast, they've been on the East Coast, and we've now we're going to be, I think, their first trip back. First game back at home is going to be right back there in Golden State. So, though I'm saying the Celtics are going to win their first game back after a long road trip and beating the Bulls, I think there's some payback on the minds of the Celtics, just as there is on the Clippers' minds for tonight's game. I feel like the Celtics are going to get 2 in a row at Oracle. I think that's going to happen. I think they're going to be locked in for it. I think the Celtics got some rest tonight, last night for tonight, and I'm 3-1, baby. Let's do it.
All right. Well, you said 3-1 last week. I said 2-2. I promise you, if they go 2-2 this week, and I'm right again, even if I get the games wrong, I'll start going 3-1. So I'm not responsible for this anymore.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'll commit that to you.
Take responsibility.
It's really, I need to be accountable. That's, and you need to hold me accountable as my partner in crime. You should never let me get away with any kind of negativity or negative vibe. It's not acceptable.
No, a cornucopia of responsibility right here.
Cornucopia, and I am
didn't use that
positionally
right,
flexible. It doesn't matter. This broadcast will be available on demand on the CLNS Radio mobile app as well as clnsradio.com. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at CSL_Justin and at CSL_Duke. Thank you for tuning in, and you can support the show by subscribing to Celtics Stuff Live on iTunes and Stitcher. Give us a rating and a review. We want your feedback. And a reminder, today's show brought to you by SeatGeek and Blue Apron. They have a great deal for all of you listeners, but most importantly, you would be supporting our show and the entire CLNS Radio network. Thank you to the loyal audience who makes it all worthwhile, and for staff writer Samuel Elias, executive producer Larry H. Russell, the founder of CLNS Radio, Nick Gelso, and my co-host John Duke. I'm Justin Poulin. Thank you for listening to this week's edition of Celtics Stuff Live.
Celtics Stuff Live.